Hey, what is up today, everybody? Thanks for listening again to the Brewery Underground Podcast, where you can follow us always at SullivanTuron I'm Steve Sullivan, joined, of course, by the Chancellor of Craft Beer, Scott Turon. And Scott, we have a pretty great podcast today with Carl Meier of Black Abbey Brewing here in Nashville. He's going to join us in a moment. But there is one thing that's kind of non-beer related that I want to mention is that a few months ago on our podcast, we had made a prediction on who may be in the Super Bowl. And at the
Did
time,
we? I don't
yeah,
even
we
remember.
did. I don't know if you remember this. I haven't gone back to listen to our prior podcast to see who you had perhaps selected. But at the time, I picked Baltimore versus Philadelphia, and obviously Philadelphia bombed out, and then the Baltimore Ravens bombed out this past weekend. Do you even remember who you may have picked?
Probably the Titans, I'm pretty sure.
You
Probably not.
think picked the
I, I
Titans?
I don't remember. I probably would have said one of, if not both of those teams. Probably would have put
Yeah.
Kansas City in there, but it's a good question. I have no idea.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. I haven't made a prediction yet, and I'm not going to on who is going to win the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers. You have a guess as to who you think may win?
Man, on paper, I think the Niners, but you can't count Mahomes and that team out. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I had to put money on it. I'd probably go with Kansas City, just again
Yeah.
because I don't think you can ever count them out.
Well, we'll have a podcast again before the Super Bowl because we're going to have on the Beer Babes coming up here in about a week, and we'll talk about them a little more on social media. But let's welcome in Carl Meier, who is the owner of Black Abbey Brewery here in Nashville. And Carl, we're happy to have you join us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
welcome, man. And that was
definitely.
and thanks for it was a quick turnaround too from when we reached out and we had some availability, so it worked out pretty quickly.
It it's funny, scheduling is so fluid, and sometimes you got some, and sometimes you don't, and it's an hour here, and an hour there, and so, but yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it did. We had some stuff booked out kind of into March, but then we had this week right here. I'm like, hey, we really don't have anything here, so it worked out great. So, and again, thanks for joining us. It worked out perfectly.
We always do on the podcast is we start off drinking a beer, and it just so happens that I see Scott has
I've got
some
the
Black
Black
Abbey.
Abbey, yep, the red ale I got. We
I
got a
have Black Abbey myself. I'm opening her up, and I have Black Abbey the Rose. So good stuff, man. Good stuff, and we're glad that to help represent your product today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
cheers.
I'm actually not I'm actually not drinking any beer. I just finished I'm part of a group of 10 people that do dry January.
Yeah.
And so it's like a cookie exchange. We each buy 3 bottles of gin, and then pour them out in little 2-ounce pours, and then we swap them all around so that everybody drinks one different gin every day in January. And then we've got one guy is sober, and he buys a non-alc gin, and he does the 31st day. And so that's been sort of a liver reset for me over the last month, because 2 ounces of gin turns into 6 ounces of gin, I think, sometimes pretty quickly.
Understood.
So I'm enjoying this. It's not a Stanley tumbler, but it is rather a large tumbler full of ice water. It's been great.
All right. Well, you gotta stay hydrated, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. But let's talk about Black Abbey because you all have been brewing a beer in Nashville for quite some time. But for people that aren't really familiar, when did you guys get started with your brewery here in Nashville?
Sure. We opened at we've always been the same spot. We're over on Sidco Drive, and the Berry Hill, Hundred Oaks part of the city. We opened in September of 2013, and so my business partners and I met in a homebrew club here in town. They used to meet over at Bosco's, if you remember, in Hillsborough Village, and so we would hang out over there and drink each other's beer. And then we formed sort of a subset of that club and started entering a bunch of beer into competitions, mostly trying to beat the guys in Music City Brewers, which was always very difficult to do. And so we, ended up winning some medals, and then we won a silver medal in the largest homebrew competition in the world at the time. It was in Oakland in 2008. And after that, we said, well, I don't know, maybe we ought to think about writing a business plan. And so we started working out a business plan, and my partners and I each had, I would do air quotes, regular jobs. And so we would, do our jobs and then work on this business plan at night and on the weekends and brew beer, and really wanted to focus on European influenced styles. And at the time, in that kind of early aughts, leading up to 2010, 2011, especially the local brands, their branding and I think sort of thought was very kind of 50s retro. They've got these big, bright, bold colors, and they're very, they got that sort of 1950s throwback vibe. But there really wasn't a lot of focus either in sort of brand identity or in the liquid on these more European styles. And the silver medal we won was for a Belgian dark strong. So we've always liked brewing with this sort of European framework in mind. And so we decided that was what we wanted to do, was make European influenced American craft. And what could be more European than naming your brewery as in the framework of a monastery or monastic brewing tradition. And so the Black Abbey references the monastery where Martin Luther wrote the 95 Theses that started the Protestant Reformation. Years later, after he was excommunicated, he married a nun, and then the two of them moved back into that monastery, which is called the Black Cloister. And Catherine brewed beer there and basically financed his ministry out of the monastery where the Protestant Reformation started. In the Middle Ages, it was common for the nuns to be the brewers, not necessarily the monks, which typically everybody nowadays thinks about these monastery breweries as being monk driven. But that was where that name came from. And so I was brewing one night and got to doing Wikipedia research, and texted Mike and John and said, hey, I got it, we should call this brewery the Black Cloister. And the next morning John texted me back and said, drink 3 beers and try to say cloister. And we thought that was hilarious and true. And so I think that the thing about switching from Black Cloister to Black Abbey was the style of beer that Catherine would have been making in the Middle Ages. She wouldn't have had access to the same kind of brewing ingredients that we have now, like the beer. Like she couldn't have been making what we think of as German lagers. They didn't have temperature control. They didn't know what yeast was, much less how to propagate or culture specific lager ale yeast strains. The malt she would have been using would have been kilned probably over peat or fire of some sort, and have electric ovens to kiln stuff. So she would have been making something very similar to what we think of as a Belgian or an Abbey style ale. So we fit that Black Cloister and Abbey ale together, and that's where that name Black Abbey comes from. But we try to let everything that we do flow out of that European influenced American craft motto.
Everything you guys do, whether it's the artwork on the cans, the website, all ties into that. Who's obviously it's your idea, but who's kind of doing the artwork and stuff on the website and in the cans?
So it's honestly, it's been sort of a rogues gallery of people over time. The original idea started with the three of us and my partner John. He had a friend of his who was an artist that they went to kindergarten together. John Brooks was his name, and John Brooks was instrumental in designing the logo and the stained glass in the middle of the arch. I think that was very much, he was very, very instrumental in that. And then when we were getting ready to put beer into cans, we realized that really wasn't anything that any of us knew anything about. And so we worked with an agency out of North Carolina called the Brand It. And so the Brand It really came up with the one that's kind of still sits in that format as the rose. The arch on the can with the big bold color around the outside and black on the inside of the arch. And they came up with the idea of having sort of an individual icon that's attached to each brand. So the rose has that white rose with a red heart and a black cross in the middle, which was Luther's crest. So that's where that came from. Special, which is our Belgian double, has a rooster. Luther oftentimes used a rooster as sermon illustration. So much so, in fact, that the history of the weather vane is dictated from this story. They would put either murals or roosters on the top of the steeples of the Protestant churches, so that sort of the illiterate population knew which the Protestant churches were versus the Catholic churches. Brandon came up with that, and then we ran with it. And then here over the last couple of years, we've been starting to do a little bit of rebranding in terms of we've narrowed the arch on the can a little bit. We've brought the style of the beer really up to the forefront, moved the icon over to the side, and that we've handled internally. We've got Alex Frizzle, who does all of our graphic work, social media events, photography. He's been instrumental in doing a lot of that stuff.
Hey, Carl, I want to go back to the beginning of this podcast just a couple of minutes ago when you were talking about Bosco's, because I've been here for 25 years, and I feel like Bosco's was almost like craft beer before craft beer was cool.
Absolutely. Yes, that's absolutely true. When I moved into Nashville in 1999, and there were 3 brew pubs in town. It was Market Street downtown, and then Blackstone over on West End, and Bosco's. Blackstone lays claim to be the oldest continuously operating brewery in the state, and they opened in 1994. Jeff with Black Horse in Clarksville would argue that point. I think they opened maybe the same month.
Okay.
So they're very, very close. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to side with Blackstone because Kent is a dear friend of mine, and I'm going to side with him. But then Bosco's started in Memphis. They had their original location was in Memphis, and then they opened 2 or 3 more. My wife got her master's at Vanderbilt, so we lived on campus for a while, and so that was a very convenient location for us to go and eat and get a beer. It's funny. One of the reasons we started kind of our own little offshoot of that Music City Brewers Homebrew Club was because you could smoke in the bar at Bosco's. And I was, for those beer nerd in me, I was like, I can't like smell or appreciate this beer because it's so smoky in here. And so we started having our own club, off-site club meetings with guys that weren't smokers. And isn't that funny? It's just, this was in, 2000. It's not like it was 20 years ago.
And it's funny because Scott, you've never been to Bosco's, right? Is that correct?
No, never.
Okay. Because in conversations with some previous friends, and I've been here 25 years, moved here in 98. So I used to work downtown. And friends of mine, we would go to Bosco's. And as you mentioned, Carl, there were only a couple places you could go. It was Bosco's. As you said, it was Blackstone. We used to go to the place that had 200 beers on tap down on Broadway.
Flying Saucer.
Yeah, Flying Saucer. And that was basically it. So I don't even know whatever happened to Bosco's. But
it contracted. It's it's the classic story of Nashville. The real estate got too expensive, and there was a lot of redevelopment going on around it. And I don't know whether. Also, I will say that Bosco's knew who they were, and they never changed. And so I think the menu never changed. The core beer offerings I don't think really ever changed. And so I think I tell this to people a lot. Nashville is a town that's driven on gimmicks. right? Everybody's got to have a gimmick, and
Yeah.
Bosco's had a gimmick that came around in 1995, and
Yeah.
after 20 years of the same gimmick, I think it just gimmicked out. And
Yep. Yep. Hey, you have on your website, and I'll let you give out that information. You have three categories of beer. It's year round, the season, and the specialty beers.
yep,
How often are you trying to add more beers for each category? And can you talk a little bit about all those three, and also on your website where people can find those beers?
yep. The website is blackabbeybrewing.com. And the web design and all that stuff again was done by another company. We worked here locally with an agency called the Buntin Group, Buntin, and they really did a great job in not just developing it and building it out, but grasping the quirky humor that is part and parcel of our brand. I think that was not always easy for folks to wrap their heads around, because we like to have sort of one foot in the truth and one foot in blasphemy, and I like straddling that line, and I think they did a really good job in driving that through our the website. And while you're on there, there's a piece of it called the Patron Saints, and they did these videos about some of our beers and the patron saints of Black Abbey, and they're absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Very, very, very funny. Really proud
They
of how
are.
that turned out.
It was my favorite part of the website. I went through each one of them because it's got their bios right there, and then I
Yes.
think it says it. It says it. It's like a little video of it too, and in an audio, and it's hilarious. Yeah, go on the
Yes.
website and check that out, because the whole website's fantastic. And there's kind of a little history lesson in there too, right? You got some stuff that you've written about Martin Luther and
Yes, for sure. But the core beers, for a long time we had 4, and then it moved to 5, and now it's effectively 6. And it's had a little bit of change over the last couple of years, and I think change is good, and I'm embrace it and excited about it. But the thing that never changes is Rose. Rose is our flagship. It's a Belgian blonde. It's about 45% of the beer we make, I would say, is Rose. And when we open the brewery, like, I don't know which, you don't know what's gonna stick or what's not. And I don't necessarily think we thought we're going to be a like flagship driven brand.
Yeah.
But Rose is our flagship, and it is certainly been the bellwether. And so Rose is our number one, and then that runs on Belgian yeast. We use yeast that comes from Chimay, and so the Chimay yeast drives 2 of the year-round beers, Rose and Special. Special is a Belgian double, so it's a little darker in color, a little stronger than Rose at 7.4. That one is also the one that is, I think, the hardest to find. Special doesn't have a lot of grocery placements. You can find it in liquor stores. You can find it in some places on draft, but it is our number one selling package beer in the tap room. And so I think it encapsulates who Black Abbey is as a European influenced American craft brand. It's a very unique style that not a lot of people are doing. And I could not be happier with how it turns out. I think it's just such an interesting and fun, approachable beer. Dangerous at 7.5%. But so those 2 of the year rounds run on the Belgian yeast, and then we have 2 IPAs, because you can't be a brewery in the United States and not have a couple IPAs. But they we got one that sits kind of on the hazy juicy side, and then one that sits on the more West Coast side. So Tennessee IPA is the hazy juicy. That beer, about 18 months ago, we did a blind panel where we did like 10, 12 different IPAs, both local and national, and just sort of compared to see how we thought Tennessee IPA stacked up, but also, if we wanted Tennessee IPA to be or feel different than the way that it was. And out of that meeting came some adjustments to both how the beer looks and particularly how the beer smells. and we really have pushed to have it be a little more hazy. You know, I like to have a little bit of a lighter back end on it, and I don't like IPAs necessarily when they're super strong. So we got Tennessee IPA where I'm really, really happy with it at 5.5%. It's got just enough haze and it's got a big fruit juice nose, and I'm super excited about that. Then 5 Points is, I tell people all the time, it's like my Sierra Nevada IPA. You know, it's Cascade and Amarillo driven. It's an OG West Coast. You know, that's the one where I'm like, if people are going to make the bitter beer face, it's going to be on 5 Points, right? Like that's our West Coasty, right? So that's those four. And then Pub Ale is new to the year-round rotation. So Pub Ale is, if I were going to enter in a competition, I would probably enter it as an ESB. If you for sure don't want to ever sell a drop of beer, go ahead and call it bitter. So, but we had a taproom manager several years ago, Andrew, who he and his family went to England for vacation. When he came back, it was with Chad, actually. Chad and Ben, Chad now at Tenfold, and Ben has moved to New Hampshire and works at a winery, but they were our brew team at the time. And sat down with those guys, was like, look, we need to develop a pub ale, because every pub you go to in England, they have just a super approachable, little bit malty, amber colored ale. And oftentimes it's on cask. It's just such a great thing. Like, we need to develop that. And so we worked on it for a long time, and it was always kind of like, oh, we should release Andrew's Pub Ale, and we'd brew it on the small system to do well in the tap room, and then we'd have other priorities move around. And so last year we decided we were going to go for it, and we brewed it when the Craft Brewers Conference was in town, because we thought, we're going to have breweries in town from all over the world. Everybody's trying to like blow everybody's doors off with, we're going to make, you know, these, you know, whatever's on trend. We're going to bring in all this beer from all over the country. And we're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do an English amber. And we were so excited about it. And I think it captured a segment of the market that was just not being paid any attention to, and had so many brewers like working on the line, production brewers being like, heck yeah, man. Like, I love this because this is beer that tastes like beer.
Right.
And so then we brewed it again, and then we started putting in cans, and we're like, you know what, we're going to move this into the year-round lineup. So Pub Ale, we graduated to year-round in September last year. So that's only been year-round for the last couple months. And then Gold and Ale, which is an English golden ale. That beer is the only year-round beer that we have in 16-ounce cans. So same idea. We wanted an easy drinking, very approachable English style ale that we can also sell in 16-ounce 4-packs. It's just, it kind of opens up venues. It opens up, you know, certain liquor stores like to carry that format. So Golden Ale is sort of the dark horse on the year-round front, in that it's also relatively new, and it has a different package format. So those are the 6 that are year-round. And then on the seasonal book, there are 5 beers that sit in the seasonal category. And the first one is almost always changing, and it has changed a number of times over the years. So I'll talk about the other ones, and then I'll come back to the pole position.
Sure.
But our summer seasonal is called Czech Condition, which is a Czech Pils. That moved into that role last year, and we've been really happy with that. That was our first sort of foray into having a true lager. And so Czech Condition runs during the summer. Then Chronicles is our fest beer. So that runs around Oktoberfest time. Then Guy Fawkes is an English brown. That comes out in October, runs until right around Guy Fawkes Day, which is November 5th. And then Krampusnacht is a Bock. And so you'll still see Krampus around a little bit. I saw cans of it at Publix the other day. That's kind of coming to the end of its season, which brings us to spot 1, which is pole. We call it pole position. We've run a Goza in there. We've run a Vienna Lager in there. We ran an amber lager in that bucket, I think, last year. But this year we decided we were going to do an Irish style red ale. And I want to say last year, I think we did, well, I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but by the time we're done with red ale, we will have brewed almost 2.5 times what we did the beer that was in that position last year. And so it's, again, a style that's the beer guys all know and the beer guys all like, and it's just sort of been out of the trend favor, if you will, for a little while.
Right.
And I think in the beer industry today, we're not chasing a trend drinker anymore. We're chasing people that like beer. And I think in order to appeal to the real people that like beer, we should make beer that tastes like beer. And I don't say that to crap on people that have different sort of approaches to what they want to make or styles that they want to approach. There's a place for all that stuff. I got out of the beer shaming business a long time ago. But I think for Black Abbey, I think our sweet spot and what we excel at is that European influenced American craft, and appealing to beer drinkers that like those more traditional styles.
It's almost like beer is getting back to basics.
A little bit, yeah. I think that's, yes. And it's been interesting and a fun ride over the last few years to see these big hazy IPAs and the double and triple juicies and pastry stouts and people using lactose and fruit and crazy sours and getting weird. Lunch the other day with a guy that I served on a nonprofit board with years and years ago, and he always brings up, I knew he would, he brought it up again, I made a green apple Jolly Rancher wit beer.
Oh,
and my kids are untying these little Jolly Rancher candies, and I'm melting it on the stove top, and I brought it to some event, and he just will never it. I mean, it was good, it was all right, it was Kelly Green, it was crazy.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild.
And it was funny, but it's and he was always like, why'd you brew that beer? I was like, well, because I can. I'm going to try it because I can.
Mm-hmm.
And my hat's off to folks that say, you know what, I'm going to try this and I'm going to see if I can sell it. And if you go, you want to make a beer that tastes like, Krispy Kreme donuts, well, let's do it, try it. But that's not where I came up. And those aren't the kind of beers necessarily that I feel like Black Abbey is known for or really tries to lean into. But it is kind of fun to be coming back around to some of these OG styles that, for folks like me who, that was my introduction to craft beer, to have that, be able to go into a bar and be like, oh yeah, I can get a red and I can get an amber and I can get a West Coast IPA, and it's kind of fun.
In the last 3 or 4 years, kind of that timeline you were just talking about, I've got a newfound appreciation for, or at least an appreciation now for, Pilsners and that stuff, the ESBs. 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't really find a good one, or they were just kind of your typical Miller Lights or whatever. But man, they've come a long way, and I think it's people like you putting effort into making those things and making them better than they've ever been. So I see them now on a menu, and I can't wait to get them.
Yes, and it's not an easy style to make, and I think for folks like us who started as home brewers, there's a lot of great breweries out there that have degreed master brewers, and those guys and gals went to school to learn how to do that stuff. And then there were a lot of people who sit in our bucket where we're like, you know what, we were home brewers and we took some classes at Siebel, and next thing you know, we got a 20-barrel brew house and we're figuring out how to use it. And and I think also, as somebody who brewed at home for a long time, I was very, very comfortable in brewing ales, very comfortable in that temperature gradient, very comfortable with fermentation scheduling. And with lagers, it's different. And especially you get into that in a big space, and you got a lot of money riding on it. It's like, it darn well better be right, because there's nowhere to hide. So
I feel like I've seen your cans of Black Abbey in various stores throughout the Middle Tennessee area for years. I mean, I know you said when you started your brewery, how long have you been canning?
We started canning in 2016. It was actually St. Patrick's Day 2016. We canned our first batch. So we were draft only for just about a little more than 3 years, and did self distribution during that time as well. So, I have been in I can't really even say this anymore. Right, Nashville's changed so much, but I used to be able to say I've been in every cooler in this town. I've
Yeah.
personally rolled kegs into every bar and restaurant in the city.
How far off do your cans go? Is it throughout Tennessee, or is it
Mhm.
elsewhere, or is it just in this
We're
area?
just, only in Tennessee. We're statewide, so Memphis to Johnson City. Uh, about 80% of our beer is sold in the Middle Tennessee area. So, we've got room to grow in Memphis and Chattanooga and Knoxville and Johnson City. I work mostly the East Tennessee market. So Isaiah is based here, and he works in the Nashville, kind of in the donut. And then we've got somebody that covers Clarksville, and then I do Cookeville and Knoxville, and Isaiah goes to Memphis. So we're spread thin. We're small, but we're scrappy.
Yeah. Well, what percentage of your operation would you say is through just canning alone?
We run about 50-50 on off. So just about half our beer goes in the cans, and the other half goes in the kegs.
There aren't many places you can go to in town, restaurants and tap rooms and things, that doesn't have the rose on draft or on their menu or something somewhere. You talked about it earlier, how it's your big hitter, but it is everywhere in this town. It's a great beer.
I ran down the street to get the
Thank
rose the
you.
other night. Enjoying it right now.
It really is stuck, and it's funny. Of course, folks listening to this won't be able to see it, but you guys were, able to see one another. If you hold those cans up and kind of look at the difference in them, the new design on rose, those cans are going to very much mimic the way those Irish red cans look, and I'm really excited for how that's going to pop on the shelf, because I do think that the consumer, like, I call it SKU paralysis. Like, you've seen it. You've gone into the grocery store and you've seen somebody standing in front of the beer aisle, just like frozen in the headlights.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much there, and it's hard to know. And the artwork on the cans is so intricate and so spectacular, and it's just eye-catching. But at the end of the day, the meaning is, I got to know what's on the inside of that can.
Mm-hmm.
That's making my decision on. And I think craft beer is, it's hard to find your space between the way that wine does it and between the way that spirits do it. And I think a lot of people buy wine based on the label. Like, I can remember buying a bottle of wine because it said Menage a Trois on it, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And like, and I don't know what kind of wine it was. I have no idea. I didn't buy it because of what the grape varietal was. I bought it because it had a funny label.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas spirits, I think, are much more like Kentucky straight bourbon. Like, I'm telling you exactly what's in this bottle because that's why you're shopping for it. And I think your beer consumers think more that way. At least the beer consumers that are searching for beer. They're like, I want to know, is this a red ale? Is this an amber ale?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a pilsner? Is this a lot? What is this?
Yep. I buy a lot of single cans.
That way.
Yeah, I buy a lot of single cans when I buy beer for home, and there's many times I pull a beer off the shelf and I can see the name of it, but I have to look in the fine print or look all over the can just to see what kind of beer it actually is. Is this a stout? Is it an IPA? I can't tell half the time.
Yeah.
Right.
But how often when you're at your brewery do you hear people that have come in, and the reason they've come in is because they've had your canned beer and now they want to check out the brewery?
It's funny being there 10 years. It happened just today. I was in the tap room and heard somebody come in and say, "Oh, I had no idea you guys were in town." Like, we've been in the same building in the same neighborhood for 10 years. Well, yeah, I had your beer out, and I think that was, when I was talking about the other brands in town being have that sort of 50s retro vibe. I think also it still is very common for breweries to name themselves after geography. You know, like Linus is from around Yazoo, Mississippi, and so that's where that name comes from. It's you assign the Crosstown out of Memphis is in the Crosstown shopping complex, and their names are very geographically specific, and we didn't want to tie the brand in that way, but that's came with sort of an unexpected downfall of, well, we're not Nashville Brewing Company or Tennessee Brew Works. We have this name that doesn't have a specific geographic tie, and so that does make where people are like, oh yes, I've had this beer I've had it a million times. I had no idea it was a Nashville brand.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the tap room, and to kind of in the tap room itself, it sticks with the theme of the brand and the brewery. Can you talk about the layout of it? And it's called the Fellowship Hall, but you've got a certain style in there that ties in everything else.
Yep. When we were getting ready to open the tap room, we really wanted our space to feel like somewhere between a monastery chapter house and a German beer hall. Luther was famously quoted as saying, I would rather have people thinking about worship in the beer hall than thinking about the beer hall during worship. And so we sort of let that drive what our tap room looks like. And it was interesting because we, one of our sort of company mottos is always sit at the community table. And it's community seating. We got 7 farmhouse tables that each seat 8, and when you come in, you're going to end up sitting with somebody you didn't know when you sat down.
Yep.
And I think that that's important, but that was really hard during the COVID time. Where it was like, nope, you really need to be sitting 6 feet away from people.
Yeah.
And so I think, and it's been interesting how that period of time has sort of changed people's approach to how they interact with one another, and coming back around to the idea of, yeah, I can sit next to a total stranger and I can talk to a total stranger. I haven't maybe forgotten how to do this. But yeah, we have 7 farmhouse tables. It's funny, we don't have bar seating. We have a sort of main bar at the front that sort of brings to mind a sort of altar of sorts, and I don't have seats there. And it was specifically designed that way because we want people to not just sit at the bar and look at their phone or sit at their bar and only talk to the bartender, but move to a table and maybe sit with somebody that they don't know, or somebody that they do, and have a conversation. And so it's sort of a different approach to worship in that way. And we, and our tap room is cozy. I'd say it's just 1,000 square feet and 56 seats. We do have a little outside space with some picnic tables that'll hold solid, another 30, 40 people could sit outside if they wanted. And we make the best of it. Like, we have an event coming up in a couple of weeks where we pair beer and cookies. The event's called Beer and Cookies. The cookies are manufactured by a group you've probably heard of with, some small female humans in green vests, whose name of organization we will not mention due to potential copyright infringement. But it's just it's a kooky event. The first time we tried it, Andrew and I did the pairings the morning of the event. And we absolutely got swamped. And so it's now, I think this is the 6th year we've done it, and it's just been a lot of fun to say, I wouldn't have normally thought that eating this cookie and drinking this beer together would be anything other than disgusting. But it's not. It's really good and really fun. But it's just a good way that, again, where we can bring people together into that space around something that we make and something that somebody else makes. And we'll have some of those small ladies there selling the things that we're using, and it's it's a good community gather round event, and I think that's kind of the heart and soul of our tap room.
Is that a public event?
just the public show up and go. It's Saturday, February 17th, 12 to 8.
Okay.
And then Steaming Goat is a food truck that doesn't steam goats. He makes steamed sandwiches, and he has a funny little goat beard. Is how he got that name. He's going to be there doing the savory side.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was
guys
going to
have a
ask you
little
about
food
that.
yourself, too, don't you?
You do have food trucks, I guess on the weekends at your brewery. Is that right?
Yeah, we do. We typically have a food truck there Monday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay.
Sometimes Sunday, but usually we do trivia on Mondays, and so we have a food truck when trivia's there, and then Friday and Saturday. And February, every one of those days, with the exception of the 17th, is Taqueria El Him, and she makes like burrito ramen that will melt your face. It's phenomenal, so good.
Mm.
What there was some other events, or do you guys have a some of the events in the tap room? But you've got a Deacon, is it a Deacon Club membership? Is that like a mug club?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have the mug club has sort of two tiers, if you will. There's the like the board of elders who are we have 95 mugs that have numbers on them, and those folks they get their mug and they have it for a year, and at the end of that time they take it home and then they sign up and they get a new one. We have an initiation, and it's that's actually coming up too at the end of the month. Initiating the mug club members is a joy. Like I genuinely enjoy it, and I will not talk about it outside of the tap room. So this is all I will tell you is it's great fun and I really enjoy it. But then the deacons are the ones who, for you Presbyterians out there, like the deacons are the ones who do the work. And so the Deacon Club is open all the time, and that rotates not based on a single date, but on the date that you sign up, and you get most of the same benefits that you get as one of the numbers, but you don't get to come to the initiation as sort of the big differentiator. But then, it's just people move away, or people's lifestyle changes, and so we turn over 5 or 6 mugs a year, and so we graduate the deacons up into those spots, and so it's a good value, and it's a good way to kind of take care of your regulars, and the mugs are a little bigger than our normal glassware, and so they get a little extra beer, and they get discounts on stuff, and it's good to have them as part of the family.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We've heard stories in within the Nashville brewing scene about breweries helping breweries in a sense of community. I'm sure you've got some examples of that. Have you got an example of maybe where someone's helped you guys along the way, or you've helped another brewery along the way?
Yeah, I would love to tell that, actually. When I was talking about when we were getting open and how we didn't know anything about anything. In order to keep your fermenters cold, or keep them temperature controlled, they're all jacketed. So like I was explaining, sort of like a Tervis tumbler, right? Like it's a cup inside of a cup with air as an insulator. Well, the fermenters work that same way, except instead of air as an insulator, it's like a jacket, and it fills with polypropylene glycol. And so you have this glycol chiller that gets the glycol down to 20 something degrees, and it pumps through these headers all the time. And then when the beer is fermenting inside that fermenter, as it gets warm, there's a probe in there, and if it gets above a certain temperature variance, it'll call for glycol, and it'll open the valve, and it'll drop the glycol cold down into the jacket and cool it back down. So we're able to be pretty precise in that sort of fermentation temperature control, right? But putting all that stuff together it's very expensive. So a lot of people try to do it themselves, but it's also really intimidating because now we're into fluid dynamics, right?
Oh boy.
And so we decided that we were going to try to stick these pipes together ourselves. And before we opened, like we went around and talked to everybody. We went and talked to Steve and Bailey at Jackalope. We went to talk to Kent and Stephanie at Blackstone. I knew Linus for many, many years. Went and talked to Linus at Yazoo. And we had Kent recommended that we use this brand called George Fisher for the piping for the glycol stuff. And so whenever we'd have a question about George Fisher pipe, we'd call Kent. And so one day we're in there trying to glue this pipe together, and it's like PVC where you got to put the cement on it and you got to stick it together and twist it. And so we're messing around with this stuff, and this guy walks in and is like, what are you idiots doing up there? Like, we're sticking this pipe together. Who are you?
Yeah, what's it look like?
Yeah, and it was Coop, and Coop was the maintenance manager at Blackstone for probably 100 years. And that is an exaggeration, but a long time. And he said, Kent sent me over here to check on you. And we were like, well, come up on the scissor lift and let's see how we're doing. And so he came up and gave us some good advice and whatever. And I mean, that guy came once a week for months to check on us, because Kent Taylor, he wants you to think he is the gruffest, most curmudgeonly person you've ever met. But that guy genuinely cares about not just the quality of beer in Nashville, but like for people that do what he does. And he would never, he hates it when I do this, and I try to do it a lot. Like he genuinely is a caring person and goes out of his way to try to make sure that that he's trying to help you, take care of you. And so I think that's a place where I always remember, and I'm very grateful for what Kent did for us. So I've tried to pay that forward whenever we can. And some of the guys that we've worked with and given advice to, and tried to help along the way, some of them have made it and some of them have not, but we've made some great friends. And we made some big changes to the way you can self-distribute beer in the state. And I think that is something that I'm really proud of. I worked very closely with Rich Vogue, who's the president of the Association for the Wholesalers. So of course the wholesalers don't want breweries self-distributing, like they want them selling their beer to a wholesaler to do the distribution. But the law was very arcane, and you could only self-distribute beer in the county where you manufacture it, which in Davidson County is no big deal. But when you get way out east, where you got 7 or 8 counties all in this like 10-mile radius, like Johnson City Brewing Company out there, like he's got basically a bar across the street from his brewery, and he can't self-distribute to them because it's in a different county. But he's too small, and the wholesaler didn't really want to pick him up because it was just kind of a headache and didn't want to deal with it. And so I think that was someplace that I'm really pleased to have been able to work with a team of folks at the Guild and with Rich at the Malt Beverage Association to get some meaningful change that allows breweries to maybe succeed where otherwise they wouldn't have been able to.
I'm sure on occasion you get people to ask you for advice on what advice can you give me to open up a brewery? And you touched on that a little bit, but are there like maybe 1 or 2 things that you tell people that might help if they're interested in opening up a brewery?
I mean, don't. I think you'll need twice as much money as you think you're going to need. And I think the people that I know that I think were the smartest about opening a brewery are the Bartosh brothers at Wiseacre. And they knew when they were in college that they wanted to open a brewery. And so the one brother went to Germany and got his master brewer certification and worked in some pretty good sized breweries. And then the other one went to work for a distributor and then went to work for a supplier in sales. And so they, between the two of them, had a terrific understanding of both sides of the business, and not just how to make it and how to sell it, but also how to deal with the wholesaler partners. And I think that's just really good advice. That was something that we didn't know anything about, was how to deal with the wholesalers and how to present yourself as an entity that can be a priority for them. Most your wholesalers sort of loosely fall into one of 3 categories. You've got the guys that distribute Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, the guys that distribute Miller, and then the independent folks. And each one has positives and negatives that go along with them. The guys that are Bud houses or Miller houses, they get you a lot of access to grocery and C-stores and, you know, places that the big brands can go and maybe a small brand can't. But you're never going to be their number one, right? No matter how big you are, how successful you become, you're never going to be number one. It's always going to be AB or Miller Coors. So that I think is something to try to grasp. Understand how the distributorships work, how franchise law works. That I didn't know anything about it. I wish that I'd known more about it when we started.
You wouldn't think it would be that, when you get started, you wouldn't think it'd be that big of a deal, but I guess you learned and realized, holy cow, it's more than I thought.
Right. It's like, you want to make beer and sell it in your own tap room. Like there's a degree of simplicity there. I'm not saying it's easy, but there's certainly it's a very straightforward at least. Once you start selling beer out in the market, you got to register your brand with the state. You got to pay these taxes, and you got to file these reports. You better have an accountant that knows what they're doing, and and then you say, whatever, I'm gonna roll out a beer called Shiny Bomb, and next thing you got some brewery in Memphis. It's like, hey, that's called market confusion, pal.
Yeah.
Cease and desist, right?
Right. So, those things, and everybody steps in those dog piles, and for a collaboration beer that we did with Jackalope to benefit the Craft Brewers Guild, Steve and I brewed it on my homebrew rig at the brewery. We made 10 gallons, and then we gave it away at Craft Brewed for donations for the guild on the patio one afternoon. And the beer was called Black Abbey. And Steve Wright grew up in Boston. Like, he's from Massachusetts. And there's a big brewery in Mass called Jack's Abbey. And how he didn't think of it, I don't know. I didn't either. But we got a call, and we got a C&D from Jack's Abbey for that collaboration beer. And they called, and God bless them. Like, they called, and John talked to him, and he's like, look, this is what we're doing. We didn't really think about this. We're so sorry. We wouldn't ever step on anybody's toes. And they were like, no, we understand now that we see, like, this isn't something you've rolled out as part of your year-round lineup. He's like, tell you what, we will license you our name for a period, for 10 days or whatever, for $1. And we were like, sounds great. And they sent over a contract, and John's like, we'll get it right back in the mail to you. And he's like, please don't send that back to me. Like, this, we're just, this is a formality. But I signed it and sent it back with $1 cash money in an envelope. And I ran into him at the Craft Brewers Conference in 2018. It was at Tailgate on Demumbrian, and they were hanging out with Wes, and Wes introduced me, and he's like, Black Abbey, that sounds familiar. I'm like, oh yeah, y'all sent us our first C&D. And he's like, oh, are you the guy that sent me the $1 bill in the mail? Like, yeah, that's me. It's really funny.
But with all the things that sometimes, I guess, with the brewery, you feel like they're stacked up against you and all the hurdles you got to get over, what's the most rewarding thing at the end of the day? And I won't even take a guess. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer.
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think we talk, the people who are in the industry, I think, talk about this a lot. Like, nobody gets to do what we do. Like, nobody goes out and has beers every day at lunch. Nobody, like, sort of runs with this circle of competitors who are also your best friends. There's a culture and a joy around going into bars and restaurants and being a part of that. I think has been really rewarding for me. That's, nobody's getting rich in this industry, I guarantee you that. But you do get to be a part of kind of pretty good sized community of people who really care about what they do. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody wanted to have their rehearsal dinner or something in our tap room, and they had a member of the family who was just like, well, we want to make sure that this doesn't turn into some sort of drunken shenanigans, where people are just pounding beers. And I said to him, I'm like, man, I will guarantee you that we have no funnels. Like we're not going to be shotgunning anything. Like it's not what just because we manufacture beer here doesn't mean that we're all just alcohol guzzling fiends.
Right.
Like we make a luxury product that people like to enjoy when they're having a nice time. If somebody wants to go buy some Mad Dog 2020 and mainline it like they're in Motley Crue, well, knock yourself out. But that's not what the craft scene is about. And that, I think, I'm really grateful to be a part of that sort of educational process. We were approached years and years ago, shortly after we opened, by the Creve Hall Little League, by a coach of a Creve Hall Little League team, and he wanted to call his team the Black Abbey Brewers, and I was all in. Like, this is great. I'm love this, and my business partners were like, "Oh hell no! Like, we can't be marketing to kids. Are you mad?" I'm like, "It's not for the kids. Like, they're 5. They can't read. Like, this is for the parents." And they said, "Nope, let's go talk to the attorney." And so we went to talk to the attorney, and he said no. And so we didn't do it. And I told this story to my dad, and just complaining about it, sort of like I'm complaining with y'all right now. And a couple weeks later, I get a big manila envelope in the mail. My dad does this a lot. He sends an envelope that's got, like cartoons he's cut out of the funny papers and stuff. Never a note. There's no note. It's just stuff. And so it's not unusual. So I get this envelope and I open it up, and in the envelope, there's a 8x10 picture of my travel soccer team when I was in like 8th grade. And so it's just the kids were all like, "Look at Dad, and he's got his hair and where's, and I'm like, why the hell did he send this to me? Like, I'm looking at this picture. It's like, why? Like, of all things, just that, did he find it in the garage? Like, what is this? And then I realized what it was. Our jerseys said KEI Liquors.
Like, nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody
right?
cared back then, right? Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I grew up in upstate New York, and it's just like it's a different the culture surrounding alcohol and alcohol consumption is just different in the South than it is in other parts of the country.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think being a part of an education about that is very helpful, and I think that's something that we can uniquely address given the quasi-religious nature of our brand.
Yeah.
That it's the role that alcohol has played in the history of humanity is important, and it hasn't always just been the debauchery of the roaring 20s. Like, it hasn't always been that.
Yeah, beer has been around. I think they say like since the beginning of humans, like since the beginning of civilization or something. Like, it goes back that long.
It's what made the nomads stop being nomads. It was like the first cultivated crops were for making beer.
You guys have a social media account for your parking lot.
Yes.
It is quite hysterical. Where does that come from? We could just chat about it a little bit, because it's funny to me.
We had an event, I don't know, years ago, and it was probably beer and cookies, honestly, where the people would check in on Facebook, and if you couldn't find the location that you wanted, you could create it. And so somebody on Instagram created the check-in point parking lot at Black Abbey Brewing Company, and then you couldn't check in to the brewery. You could only check in to the parking lot, and that infuriated me. And so you get on and you have to send in your little notice, and I just wasn't ever getting anywhere. And so I'm like, you know what? All right. So I started that account, Black Abbey parking lot, and I would take pictures of stupid stuff in the parking lot and tag Zuckerberg and Instagram and like anything I could find. Just like, hey, it sure be great if I could check into the brewery, but I can't. I can only check into the parking lot because some boob created a check-in out here in the parking lot for an event that we had, and Facebook and Instagram will not listen to me and fix it. And I did that for a long time until they finally fixed it.
Did they really?
Yeah. And
That's
so then
hilarious.
I just never did away with the account. So I
It's
don't
funny
use it
because
very much anymore.
no, it's just got random pictures on there too, like set of keys. I think there was a baby's pacifier or something.
Oh yeah.
Just probably random stuff.
Yes. And sometimes I'll come in the morning and there'll be something in the parking lot. Like the building directly behind us is now occupied by Imogene and Willie, like that really fancy blue jean brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they must have whatever they had thrown away must have been a pair of jeans, and maybe they fell out of the dumpster when it was getting emptied. But I came in one day and there's like a pair of jeans kind of just laying in the middle of the parking lot. I'm like, this is going on Black Abbey parking lot. Like this is the perfect thing.
Yes, it's the ultimate.
Yeah. So it's just yes. I mean, whatever. Sometimes you find weird stuff in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And then it just goes for a good engagement.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was just looking you guys up on social media, right? Black Abbey comes up, brewing comes up, the tap room comes up, you come up, and then the parking lot comes up as well. It's like, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Carl, we're definitely going to have you on another podcast and listen to more of your stories because you've been fantastic today. And before we wrap this up, we want to again talk about how people can find you on social media, and for those that are interested, certainly in going to your brewery. So if you could give out all that information.
Sure thing. The brewery is located at 2952 Sidco, Sidco, Sidco Drive, which is in the Berry Hill, 100 Oaks area, Nashville. We're about 5 miles south of downtown, right off of I-65 at the Armory exit. And then on the social medias, of course, you can find us on Facebook /Black Abbey. And then Instagram is at Black Abbey Brew. The tap room, I think it's Black Abbey Tap Room, if I'm not mistaken. And then
right.
And then you can find me personally at Black Abbey Carl.
You've got a pretty good parking situation. You've got some spots in the front, but you do have some around the back too, don't you?
We do, and we have a great relationship with the places next door and across the street from us. And so we've got 20-30 spots in the back of the building, and then a handful right up front. But then as you're looking at the front of the building, MJM Architect, which is immediately to the left, we're reciprocal with them, so folks can park over there just as long as they don't park in the grass. That really ticks them off. And then directly behind you, as you're looking at the brewery, is Ancora Consulting, and they also let us overflow park over there.
Okay, that's cool. And I bring it up because parking in this town, is at a premium. So anywhere you
It sure
go,
is. And free. There's free parking at Black Abbey.
Hey, that's always a good thing.
I went over to the filling station today at lunch, right there at 12 South, right there by the Edley's.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And behind Edley's, they've got kind of this tore up parking lot and this little dirt lot. It's a pay lot now. They've got and they've got orange, like it's in the dirt, like it's pay lot in the dirt. Like, how much more parking do they need, or much more paid parking do we need in this town? It was ridiculous.
I can't bring myself to pay. I mean, I will park 6 miles away and walk to the filling station before I will pay to park back there. Like it's just it's hard. And I mean, it was free for so long, but then you got all the other places where you got to pay, and so people would just park there at Edley's and leave their cars all day and all night, and then there was no place for the Edley's customers to park.
Right.
So
yeah, it's tight back there anyway. Yes, I saw that today and I was like, oh, that's just just from me wrong. But hey, I've got one last question, if you don't mind, if you got just a minute.
Lay it on me. Yep.
And this comes up because I never thought about this way until we started talking to some brewers and some owners of breweries. But how do you feel about the Untapped app?
You are asking the wrong person, my friend.
See, as a consumer, we look at it one way, right? I'm checking in beers, and I like this and I like that, and I'm racking up these numbers. But I never thought about it from your end before.
Yep. So we used Untapped for a long time to run the menu in our tap room. It forces you as a brewery to be very deliberate about building out beers. Like you release, we do a lot of small batch, limited release stuff through the tap room, and so you can either let the Untappd on the user end, let them create that stuff for you, or you can create it yourself. And so I think it forces the breweries to be diligent about providing good information to the consumers. And so in that respect, I think Untappd is good. I think the idea of being able to keep track of what you're drinking and checking in and so being able to say, yes, I like this place, or I've keep track of, I've drank these beers, I've tried them before, or I haven't. I think that's really helpful. What I hate and despise with the heat of a burning sun, that someone will check in a beer that's a style that they don't like, and they'll say, I hate IPAs, half star, and they're checking in Pliny the Elder, or a world-renowned, world-class beer, and giving the power of whether a brand is viewed as successful or their products are viewed as good versus bad to someone who's going to rate them based on their own personal likes and dislikes, I find to be incredibly annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and I'm not saying this to like crap on Untappd users. That's not my intent at all. But it is frustrating as a brewery owner to look at check-ins for things where people are making an honest admission, like, I would never ever drink this and I hated it, 1 star, even though they're not taking into account, okay, is this a well-made product? Is this something that might have broader appeal? Mm-hmm. My favorite Untappd story, our lead brewer once upon a time, Ben Martin was his name. He made a beer using a lot of peat smoked malt. And for those of you who've ever used smoked malt in your homebrew, like peat smoke is a very intense flavor. And so you really want to make it less than 1% of your total grist. And a little bit goes a very, very long way. And so he made a peat smoked like barley wine that used 30% peat malt. So it was, like burning leather, right? It was just really intensely smoky, and I loved it. And I think Ben and I probably drank the majority of it, and really, really good. And one day he comes into the office and he's laughing. He's like, you got to see the Untappd check-ins on this beer. And I said, all right. And he shows me the first one, and it says, I love this beer so much. It's like it was custom made for me. I can't believe how good it is. The most incredible thing I've ever put in my mouth. 4 stars. All right. So we're laughing. We're like, this guy, like, you loved it so much you couldn't give it 5. Like, what's this? And then you scroll down to the next one, and it says half star, and the comment just said, "The fuck." And like those 2 comments, like, it summed up for me the whole Untappd experience. Like, that was genuinely someone who drank that beer and didn't understand what it was we were trying to do, and was like, this is really awful. Like, I can't believe this is a thing. But again, on a small batch, one-off oddball project like that we do in the tap room from time to time, like, that kind of makes sense. But for somebody to go and say, it be at the airport and get a pint of Tennessee IPA at an airport bar, and because every other beer is out of tap, whatever, it's been snowmageddon and nobody can deliver beer, and there's only 1 beer left, and it's this, and I have to drink it because I need to get drunk before I get on a plane, and I hate IPAs, half star. God.
Yeah. And I never thought about it from that perspective before until we started talking. I forget who it was. I don't know if it was Chris Dolan or Wesley, but or Grayson, but I never thought about it before, but I completely understand.
Right. Well, Black Abbey the Rose gets a lot of stars from me because I've had the beer before, and I'm enjoying it tonight, so certainly love it. But hey, Carl, we appreciate you coming on today. We hope that you'll come back again sometime because you got some great stories, and that's one of the things on this podcast. Besides the fact that we like to talk to brewery owners and others, we also like to hear some good stories, so we appreciate it.
I sure like to tell them. So thanks for giving me the format.
Thanks a lot, and we definitely appreciate it. And we will definitely be back soon. This has been Carl Meier with Black Abbey Brewing. We appreciate it. Go to Black Abbey, go get their beer, and you'll love it. And this has been the Brewery Underground Podcast. For Scott Turon, I'm Steve Sullivan.
Cheers.